Swashbucklers, you're listening to Under the Crossbones, episode number 95. My name is Phil Johnson. I'm your host for the show. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for telling your friends. Thank you for leaving reviews, all that kind of good stuff. Much appreciated. Episode 95, fun fact about the number 95. In the movie Cars, and Cars 2, and the upcoming Cars 3 from Pixar, Lightning McQueen's racing number is 95. And they chose 95 because 1995 was the year that Toy Story was released. And originally, they were going to give him the number 57, which would have been a reference to John Lasseter's birthday. They were not going to name it, number him 73, which would have been a reference to my birthday. They wouldn't have thought to do that. So his number is 95 because that's the year that Toy Story came out. So when you go see Cars 3, whenever that's coming out, next month or something, I don't know, go, you'll see it, 95. There it is. So my guest on the show today is Steve Sanders, a.k.a. Blackbead of Seadog Slam. Seadog Slam is a pirate poetry group. Now, let's file this under things I never expected to be talking about on the show, was poetry. I am not, I'm a writery guy, I'm a readery guy, I'm not a poetry guy, and somehow I've missed writing and reading poetry over the years, but we get deep into what's interesting about that and how they sort of shoehorn, I don't want to say shoehorn, that doesn't sound nice, how they manage to do a poetry show at a pirate festival. This is a really great talk. It's one of those where you kind of look at it and you might go, maybe I'll skip this episode. Don't skip this episode because this is it's a really fun talk. But Steve is deep into poetry and he's deep into what makes it tick and why it works and how they're using it in a pirate context. Now, you might have heard me mention Seadog Slam a few months back. They did Pirates on the Prairie with Pride of Bedlam, and I forgot who else was on that show. But anyway, so they're out there, they're doing the things, and they're doing it in a lot of different places. The Pirate Fest and the Renaissance Fest and the Steampunk Fests and that kind of stuff. So don't sleep on this one. Don't erase it thinking that we're going to be talking about boring poetry because it's a really cool, fun interview that I think you're going to dig. So that'll be coming up in a second with Steve Sanders, Seadog Slam. He'll also explain to you why his character name is Blackbead and not Blackbeard. It's a funny story. I think you'll dig it. So I am going to be super sleep deprived over the next couple of weeks because I'm doing a stupid amount of driving for my gigs coming up. And here's where those gigs are going to be. Wednesday, June 14th. That's tomorrow. If you're listening to this the day this comes out, I will be at the Mill Casino in Coos Bay, Oregon. Friday and Saturday, June 16 to 17, I will be at Chadwick's in Medford, Oregon. Wednesday, June the 21st, I'll be at Seven Cedars Casino in Sequim, Washington, and Friday, June 23rd, Seven Nightclub in Bend, Oregon, and Saturday, June 24th, Mobster Mike's in Bremerton, Washington. And that is a mix of shows all over Oregon and Washington. In between, because I have like a 4-day break in between, I'm actually going to drive back home to California for like 2 days. And I'm going to give some music lessons. I'm going to spend Father's Day with my dad, and then I'm going to drive back to Washington. So I'm gonna be out there putting some miles on the old Corolla this couple of weeks here. It's happening. We're doing it. It's the comedian life. Comedian. I didn't even say that right. I'm a little bit sleep deprived. I'm gonna have to get some sleep before I start driving on Wednesday. Wednesday's gonna be fun. I'm gonna drive for 9-10 hours and then do 2 shows. So it's I don't want to say glamorous because it's not that. It's not glamorous being a comedian sometimes, but it's going to be a whole bunch of fun shows. I've played a bunch of these places before, and they're always a good time. So if you're in Oregon or Washington and near any of those cities and want to come see me play, do come on out. And if I'm not coming to your town on this run, go to underthecrossbones.com, click on the tour dates button, and you'll see all the shows that I have coming up there. Saw some Wonder Woman over the weekend. What'd you think of it? Did you like it? I thought it was good. It was well done. I thought Gal Gadot did a great job. I thought it was a little too long. No movie needs to be 2.5 hours long. We just don't, especially a superhero movie. It doesn't need to be 2.5 hours long. Filmmakers, please tell your story in 90 minutes because people got to pee. That's all I'm saying. I had to make a trip. I missed about 5 minutes of the movie. But anyway, if you're enjoying the show, as we get into our interview here in a second with Steve Sanders, make sure you come over and join us on Facebook, facebook.com/underthecrossbones. On Twitter, we're at Under Crossbones, over there. And make sure that you're subscribed to the show through iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or Slacker or whatever your favorite podcatcher is of choice. I use one called Podcast Addict. That's great. You can use that one. And if you want to get all the show notes for this episode, they will be at underthecrossbones.com/095. If you're digging the show and you want to help us keep going, there's a few ways that you can do that. First of all, you can tell your friends. That's always helpful. But if you want to help monetarily, go to underthecrossbones.com/support. There's a little PayPal box there. You can drop any amount you like into that PayPal box, whatever you think is appropriate. And that's a donation. There's an Amazon banner there. If you want to help financially, but you don't want to help financially, click the Amazon banner on the support page. That will take you over to Amazon, where you can buy yourself something nice. Buy yourself a lovely gift, and Amazon kicks me back a few pennies, and it's very helpful because it happens. Yeah. If you want to be a sponsor of the show, that's cheap and easy. Come on over to the support page, underthecrossbones.com/support. Yeah, I just got some new audience numbers in. It's looking good. It's looking good. 110,000 people per month. Yeah. Over 100 countries? Yeah, that's happening. Show's doing well. So if you're new to the show, welcome, and we will be getting to the interview, and I'll stop rambling in a second. In fact, you know what? Let's do that now. We're going to get into my interview right now with Steve Sanders, also known as Blackbead from Seadog Slam. Check it out. So you are part of Seadog Slam, which is a pirate poetry group, which strikes me as kind of... here's two things I like. Let's put them together in a Reese's Peanut Butter cup of performance art. So, were you? Which came first, piracy or poetry?
Actually, it was poetry.
Okay.
I've been writing since I was in high school.
Uh-huh.
And never really thought about doing anything professionally with it. But in 2000, I wrote a long epic piece as part of a Black History Month celebration about the Buffalo Soldiers.
Okay.
And people were so excited about it. They kept saying, you need to get this published. You need to get this published. So for about 5 years, I tried to get it published professionally. I tried to get an agent, all the different things that writers go through. Mm-hmm. Finally gave up and started publishing myself. But that was back when it was all cowboy poetry, etc.
Sure.
The poetry came first, and then I also do beaded jewelry.
Okay.
And was selling beaded jewelry, and we decided to do a Renaissance fair. And so we thought, okay, we've got to go dressed as something. And I decided our gimmick would be we're a couple of pirates who've come ashore to sell off our booty. And I started asking everybody I know, who was the most famous pirate you've ever heard of? And this was actually pre-Pirates of the Caribbean, so nobody said Jack Sparrow. They all said Blackbeard.
Right.
So I decided that we were going to be a couple of Blackbeard's pirates who had come ashore because, of course, the captain can't come ashore. He'll get arrested.
Okay.
And I was writing my wife an email saying I had decided the business was going to be named Blackbeard's Treasure Chest. And I misspelled it. It came out Blackbead.
Oh,
so I have been Blackbead ever since. There are people that know me only as Blackbead. They don't know my real name, but
that's funny.
So I was writing. Well, once again, my wife dragging me into success, but she said I was writing a lot of cowboy poetry then, and she said, "Well, if you're going to write cowboy poetry, why don't you write pirate poetry?" And from that one little sentence, a whole production was born. I started writing pirate poetry, and I've always been influenced not by the modern poets, but more by, say, Kipling and Tennyson and Poe. And so most of my stuff rhymes. Not all of it does, but I tend to write in rhyming quatrains, and I like to tell tales. Some of my poetry is just sort of general. This is what it's like to be a pirate, but a lot of them actually tell stories.
Uh-huh.
And so we go to a small little fair down here in Texas. The gentleman who owns it actually does 3 or 4 fairs. One of them is the Texas Pirate Festival, and that'll be the first weekend in June. We're gonna be doing that. That's where this group was born, actually. I started doing a one-man show, and also I had started publishing. I've got a little company called Blackbead Books, and I was going to put out another anthology. And one of the other vendors, a gentleman by the name of Scott Goodrich, who goes by Mayhem, brought me a couple of things to submit for this anthology. And I said, man, this is really good. And there was another fella out there named Scott Ward, who has since become Dr. Harmonious Scott, our ship's spiritual advisor. And normally that's accompanied with the motion of drinking out of a bottle.
Right.
And so we decided to do a 3-person show. And originally it was just us doing poetry. And we had little success with it. And other folks wanted to get involved. First of all, my wife, Melody, she goes by Captain Jane Jasper, and she started performing with us. And another one of the vendors, a guy named Kevin Perkins, whose pirate name is Ray, just Ray. Okay. Ray, just Ray. And we kind of developed a crew, and we started doing a show that went kind of like this. We would have an MC, and he would announce he or she would announce to the audience, okay, we're all, bloodthirsty pirates who just like slit your throat for the pennies in your pocket to say hello. But we also have a soft side. Kind of get into the poetry thing, how, when we're not taking ships or prizes, we like to gather in the forecastle and write poetry. Right. We all think we're better than the others. Okay. So the show became a contest. That's where the Seadog Slam comes in. Slam poetry is a form of. It's not actually a form of poetry. It's a type of poetry competition that's been around for years. Right. And we stole that, true pirates. And so what we would do is we would swear the crew in as swear the audience in as honorary members of the crew. And then each poet would get a chance to do 3 rounds of poetry. And at the end of the 3 rounds, it was the crew's job to decide which was the best poet. Okay. And the way they would vote is with their doubloons. The 3 poets would go amongst the crowd, and whoever came back with the most tips would be crowned the pirate laureate. Nice. And we've got several different versions of the bling, as we call it. It's the necklace that gets awarded. And we've been doing that for some time now, added some more crewmen, and it just kind of grew from there. That's really great. And so I am a novice at best with poetry. Probably, I would say less than a novice. I've had quite a bit of experience with just about every other form of writing, but poetry I've never gotten to for some reason. And what is it about poetry that sticks with you in a way that maybe prose doesn't? Well, I'm also a prose writer. I've published several short stories. I don't know that I have a novel in me, but maybe when I retire. Okay. But the thing about poetry is that there's a lot of definitions of poetry, but to me, the thing that sets it apart is that it is intended to excite the emotions. Mm-hmm. Whether it is love or hate, even, or when I talk about my poetry, we often refer to it as adventure poetry. Okay. Because the idea is there will be either a horrific or heroic theme to it, and it's poetry is designed. Perfect example is William Shakespeare was an incredible poet as well as playwright, and sure. His poetry gets into his plays. But the speech, St. Crispin's Day speech there in Henry V, that is intended to take those men and convince them that they can defeat an army 5 times their size.
Mm-hmm.
And historically, that's exactly what happened. I mean, love poetry. It's written to inspire those feelings. And I think that's what I enjoy about it most. I mean, hey, let's face it. I was a lawyer. I am a lawyer. Back when I was doing trial work, your closing arguments were written as much to inspire the jury or the panel to vote your way as much as anything else.
Sure, without going full Johnny Cochran. If the glove don't fit, you must have quit.
No, I never had that kind of a case, thank God. But I mean that to me is what sets poetry apart. It's a really great novel is a fantastic read, but it's probably not written to make you want to get up and jerk out your cutlass and swing across to the enemy ship. And that's what we try and do with our poetry. And I think if that answers your question, I think it's that visceral response that makes you want to get up and go. The old saying about John Philip Sousa. Somebody said his marches could make a one-legged man, step out. And that I think is the goal for poetry.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, do you think that is a function of just the constraints of the form, in that there is rhyming, it's not going to be 300 pages long, that kind of thing? Is there more need to squash as much energy and emotion into a shorter format like that causes that, you think?
I think you're absolutely right. If you think about some of the epic poetry, Homer, Lord Byron, very little, Lord Byron back in February of, I think it was 1823, published a book. It was a single long poem called The Corsair. And it was that's exactly what it was about. It was about a pirate down in the Mediterranean.
Right.
And of course the cool thing about Byron, he was a rock star, published 10,000 copies and they all sold the same day.
Nice.
I would like to be able to pull that off, but I
think we all
don't know that I'll ever. Yeah, I don't know that I'll ever get there. But yeah, I think you're right. The longer poems tend to be less emotion driven. I mean, the best haiku are the ones that in 3 lines or in 17 syllables, can bring you to tears.
Certainly, yeah. One of the things that I deal with a lot is because I write both music, I write songs, and I write stand-up comedy. And when a premise sort of occurs to me, that's one of the first things I have to do is decide whether it's going to be a song or whether it's going to be stand-up. Yeah. And usually when it is a more emotional type thing, I mean, I'm writing comedy songs for the most part, but when it's a lover relationship theme or something like that, it most often will end up as a song because it does have that sort of compact emotional feel to it, or I can, 3 minutes in, I can have people dancing, crying, screaming, whatever it is. So that absolutely, it's almost the same parallel to the prose versus poetry thing. And so when you started doing this at the pirate festivals and things like that, I mean, how did you start doing that? Did you just say, hey, we're a bunch of pirates, we do poetry, we want to come and do it at your festival? How did that work?
Well, we were very lucky. The Texas Pirate Festival, he also does a Ren Fair called Middle Fair. Mm-hmm. And then he's got a couple of other shows he's going to do this year. But I was one of the founding vendors.
Okay.
And so when I suggested to this guy, hey, let me do this 1-person show, mm-hmm. He was all for it. He was trying to fill his stages. And so when the Seadog Slam came about, it was just a natural progression from the 1-man show into the 4-person show.
Yeah.
And people, I once saw a posting on Facebook. A lady posted about us, there was a picture, here's the Seadog Slam. I've always been surprised at their success. A poetry show at Renaissance festival. It just doesn't seem to, ring true. But here in Texas, we've also got a couple. Well, we've also got a couple of other guys that do poetry and do it really well. There's a gentleman who goes by Sholo the Nubian,
Okay.
and he does romantic poetry at a couple of taverns, both at the Texas Renaissance Fair and at Scarborough Fair. And then, of course, there's Arthur Greenleaf Holmes, who is making a killing doing this.
Huh.
Most of his stuff is very, very, how do I say this, naughty.
Okay.
And I really like the guy, and he does a fantastic show every time we go just for fun. I try and make his show, but we shoot for, I think, a different style. But yeah, that was how it got started. We had some success at this one area, this one venue, and then we started branching out. We now do the Texarkana Renaissance Fair. We've also started performing as the Seadog Slam. We do steampunk events.
Okay.
We got a gig now at the longest running Steampunk Festival in Texas, and I think we may have reached our peak. I think most people react to pirates and poetry the way you did at first. It's just not something that fits within their idea of what a Ren Fair show should be. So
yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I mean, in the context of a Ren Fair, it makes a little more sense because there is this sort of Shakespearean element and things like that at a Ren Fair. I'll ask you about the steampunk thing in a minute, but when you started doing it at the pirate festivals, that does seem like an emotional contradiction of sorts. And how did people start to react to that when you were doing it?
Well, I got to tell you, we definitely have our fans that follow us everywhere we go. But we have done Sherwood Forest Fair a couple of years, and we perform in their pirate section. And that, I think, is probably more of a traditional Renaissance fair. And we have not had the greatest success there. I think what happens, though, is there are several pieces that each of us do that people really enjoy. And so it's almost like they sit and wait for us to do those pieces. The problem with that is every show we do is different.
Right.
Each individual poet gets to choose which poems they're going to do. We have a different MC every show because you have somebody different winning every previous show. And I don't know. I think we probably will have more continued success in the steampunk arena. Okay. But I ain't giving up pirates, man. It is too much fun. And there is a visceral quality about the life of pirates.
Sure.
Whether it's the freedom or the hedonism or whatever it is. And so some of these poems really do resonate with some of the pirate folks.
I imagine. Yeah.
We may kind of change the way we're doing things. We've often talked about putting together more of a comedy show where we intersperse the poetry, and then I've also thought about someday trying to get a lane act out of this where we each operate individually. And then, it's pardon me, sir, but could you spare a few coppers for a tale of the sea? That kind of thing. Sure. We did a show at Sherwood. It was in a pub. It was in one of their taverns, and there was a musical group across the way, and people were having difficulty hearing us. So we just split up and started working the room individually. And I think that's the other thing about poetry. It is a very personal thing.
Sure.
And so when you go up to someone's table and you are performing right, it's like magic. That close in hand magic. Yeah. People react to it better.
Interesting. Yeah, I imagine there's plenty of experimentation around the show format that you could do that would engage people, and it's a tricky thing to do to get people into something that they're not expecting. And that's all it is they're just not expecting it in that context. And if they were going to a poetry slam, they would be expecting it, and they'd probably love it. But I like things that are not what you're expecting, that are out of the ordinary like that and sort of stuck in a weird place. That's always entertaining to me.
Well, funny you should say that. Every year, one of our best gigs, we go up and perform in Texarkana at a fundraiser for the fair.
Uh-huh.
And it's normally in either a bar setting or a restaurant setting. And so what we do is, instead of trying to create a stage, we just go amongst the tables.
Okay.
And that has been really successful. I don't know why, but like you said, it's that experimentation, and we're just going to keep doing this until we get it right.
Yeah, that's great. And so let's talk about the steampunk thing for a minute. Again, steampunk is another thing that I'm very not familiar with, but to an outsider looking in, steampunk seems to be more of a visual aesthetic more than anything. So then what kind of emotions do you elicit in poetry that reflect the steampunk thing?
Well, you also have to remember that, steampunk is a subgenre. It's a literary genre.
Sure.
And the people who are into steampunk usually do a lot more reading. That's where the whole genre derived.
Uh-huh.
And so doing poetry, there are some steampunk novels where either historical or fictional poets are primary characters.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's the same sort of thing. My absolute favorite type of poetry is adventure poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the steampunk stuff, what I try and write are things that have heroic or horrific themes and, appeal to more. Yeah, that is one thing I've heard people say about my poetry is that, as I'm reciting it at the end of the show, they always say, "Oh, I could see exactly what you were saying. It was just like it was a show going on in my mind."
Uh-huh.
There's a piece I do called "The Clockwork Man," and it's sort of my homage to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And
nice.
It's sort of a steampunk Frankenstein with a twist at the end. And I think you're right. A lot of times we'll get up to perform. There'll be a crowd in front of us that are waiting for the next show, and we draw them in. And those are my favorite moments when we take the stage and there's a bunch of people out there and they're talking and laughing. But as we do our show, they slowly get drawn in, and
Mm-hmm.
I love that moment where you can hear the pin drop.
Yeah, that is always interesting when you can kind of convert an audience. It's much harder work, but it's gratifying when it does happen.
Yeah, and it doesn't always happen, Phil. It doesn't always happen.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I remember we were doing a show down at Sherwood, and it was kind of late in the day, and people had been stopping by the taverns frequently, and we're up there trying to do our show, and I heard one woman say, bring on the next act or something like that. So yeah, it doesn't always work, but the show must go on.
I was going to ask if you get like poetry hecklers, like we get hecklers.
No, I think most of the time the hecklers for us are just the people who don't pay any attention.
Yeah.
It's not that they want to, it's not that they interact with us. It's that they don't interact at all with us.
Yeah. Which is worse.
But yeah. When you're being just totally disregarded, that is pretty bad. That I have to say though, with the group of people that we have doing this, that doesn't happen very often. We have been very fortunate in that the vast majority of the times, like I say, we'll get started, and before you know it, the crowd has been drawn in. They're clapping, usually tipping pretty well at the end of the show,
uh-huh.
and that's there's a couple of pieces I do, like I said, that are people's favorites, and those are the ones where you're because I try and memorize as much of my stuff as I can.
Sure.
It's crazy. You're the one who writes this, but it's still kind of difficult to memorize. But
I know it well.
where you're standing up there and you're reciting and you're looking out over the crowd, and they're riveted. That's the best feeling at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right in that sometimes when you get those people who just aren't paying attention, and it's not a passive art form. It's not a guy playing a guitar in the corner that you can kind of ignore. There's no such thing as background poetry. And
right.
we deal with the same thing. There's no such thing as background stand-up comedy. And if they're not paying attention and they're talking to their friends, ooh, does that irritate me?
Amen, brother. Amen.
But
pay attention to me. I'm up here. Pay
exactly.
attention to me.
Yeah, and then I think about that, and I'm like, oh, how needy is this art form? This is... And the memorizing thing, I spent most of the morning trying to memorize a new 10-minute bit that I'm working on. So yeah, I feel you on that one. That's always a task.
My trick there is I will record the poem and then pop the CD in the car and just listen to it and then try and repeat it along with myself.
Yeah.
And I've discovered that's the best way to memorize anything.
I can't stand to listen to myself that much.
I didn't say it wasn't hard work, Phil. Yeah.
So where's the best place online for people to keep up with what you guys are doing?
We have, there's two places. I'd say our Facebook page, the Seadog Slam. There's also a Blackbead Books page. But we are working on our website now. Like I said, what we're trying to do now is in addition to continuing performing, in addition to continuing to try and sell our merchandise, we are trying to get more people involved in poetry. So we have like I said, we've got the little publishing company, Blackbead Books, and then we also have we have a mobile recording studio. And we have a little company called Seadog Studios, and basically what we do on the recordings is we will record the poet, enhance their voice if it needs to be, and then add audio effects and original music.
Nice.
We're struggling. Slam poetry is doing really well right now. Rap and hip hop and popular music, because to me it's all just poetry set to rhythm or to music. So if you write songs, you're a poet, Phil.
I would have never guessed it.
Yeah. But what we're trying to do is help more people get into this. But the easy way to find us is the Facebook page, and we are also working on a website. I've got a website up now, but it's in construction. And the website's going to be seadogstew.com.
Okay, good. I'll make sure I get all that in the show notes and everything. Now, do you take on, at any of your events, do you have people that aren't officially in your crew come up and read it all? Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. And we tend to find that more often at the steampunk shows. But we will always, if somebody comes up to us and says, hey, I've got a poem and I'd really like to recite it, we will work you into our shows. Absolutely.
That's great.
And it's been, it's been dangerous at times.
Sure.
But we've never crossed the red line.
That's good. That's good. I think any poetry I write would probably have a rhyme with Nantucket in it somewhere. And, I'd have to
limericks are a lot of fun.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's great, Steve. So we talked about a bunch of events and things like that, but what do you have coming up in the next couple of months that people can catch you at?
We will be at the Texas Pirate Festival the first weekend in June.
Okay.
And then after that, we'll be doing the Steamdog show at a convention. I've started doing a whole lot more conventions, I think, because of the steampunk. But we will be at Amacon in Amarillo, Texas. I want to say that's the first weekend or the last weekend in July. And then throughout the year, we'll be doing Texarkana in October. We do a book signing at the Texas Renaissance Festival. There is a really fun event here in Fort Worth called Arts Goggle.
Okay.
It's on the south side, and it's basically just a festival of artists. And I used to show my jewelry there, but then decided, you know what, poetry is just as much an art form as anything else.
Sure.
So I now go out there and pop up a tent, and we have a big bell and a sign that says "Ring bell to add poetry." And people come walking by, and they'll look at the sign, and they come over and ring the bell, and they get a poem right there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't? You just want to see what happens.
Yeah, especially after that sixth glass of wine.
Some guy just ding, 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 ding.
Hang on. We got enough poetry to go all night. Hang on there.
Oh man, that's great. Well, this has been fun, Steve. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you want everybody to know?
Would you like to hear one?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Yes, please. Let's hear one.
This is one that people have asked for over and over, and strangely enough, originally it had nothing to do with pirates, but it just sort of grew. It's called "It's in Me Blood."
All right.
I remember the pub were crowded the night we met, old Benny Hawkins and me. The crew were rowdy, for we sailed the next day, and the rum was flowing quite free. I sat and watched old Ben drink all night, and drunker he became. Sailing together, we were soon fast mates, and I found all his nights were the same. I'd seen the drink kill a man before, and I hated to watch it take old Ben down. So I waited for a night when he weren't so in his cups, and there weren't any other crewmen hanging round. Hearing me out, he answered, "I know I should stop drinking, I should. But I fear it's in me blood, boy," he said. "The devil's thirst, aye, it's in me blood." I remember the deck were hot as we stood to, me and the rest of the men, to watch old Benny take a lashing, for he had been fighting again. He'd pulled a knife in the forecastle, near taking another man's eye. The master had warned him about fighting, so they beat Ben till he come near to die. Later, I tended the cat's scratches with strips of sail covered with lard, and I asked him, "Why must you be a brawler if it makes your life so hard?" Gritting his teeth, he answered, "I'd stop me fighting if only I could. But I feel it's in me blood, boy," he said. "The red rage, aye, it's in me blood." I remember the ship were burning like Hades as we fought to take a new prize. That was the day old Ben become a hero. I saw it with me own two eyes. We were having the worst of the battle when old Ben charged the enemy crew. He rallied our men and he saved us, but he paid the devil his due. I knelt by old Ben at the last moment as the light slowly slipped from his eyes, and I asked him, "Why did you do it?" And the answer come as a surprise. "You men, you're all like me family, and it's me home, this old hunk of wood. And I guess it's in me blood, boy," he said. "A pirate's life, aye, it's in me blood."
Very nice. That was great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Fantastic.
But that's the kind of thing. It's something that tells a tale, something that kind of gets your emotions going.
Sure.
And if somebody, later on comes up and says, "Hey, that really made me think," that never hurts either.
Right. That really made me think. And here's a tip. Those are the
yeah. Oh, and the one thing, I have to say, we were talking about this the other night. This stuff does get in your blood, and I've been doing this now since 2005, and so I've been working at the same place all that time as well. And in my other life, I am attorney. I am an attorney for the federal government. So I spent 6 months in Iraq as the theater counsel for my agency, and when I came back, they gave you the I was in Iraq medal.
Right.
So I'm standing up on stage with this full bird colonel, Air Force colonel, and he pins it on me, and we turn to face the crowd, and we're standing there for a couple seconds, and then he goes, "Arr," and half the crowd of my coworkers went "Yar." So yeah, this pirate stuff definitely gets in your blood.
That's great, man.
Yeah. Oh, happy National Poetry Month, by the way.
It is. Yes. Perfect timing.
Yes. And so all month long on my door, I have had an envelope full of poems, saying take a free poem.
Nice. That is fantastic. Great, Steve. Well, this has been super fun, man. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, thank you, Phil. I really appreciate you having me.
You betcha. And there it is, friends. That was my interview with Steve Sanders, a.k.a. Blackbead of Seadog Slam. How awesome was that poem? Right? Because I was rapt. I was into it. It was fun. I might have to go check out some poetry now. I've seen like slam poetry and things like that, and it's always an interesting kind of thing. But somehow it was just an art form that never quite clicked in my brain. But I think it's starting to click in my brain now. So I may have to go find some more poetry to look at. If you want to look at, read, listen to, I don't know if you just look at poetry. It's anyway. If you want to find out more about Seadog Slam, go to facebook.com/Seadog Slam. Easy enough, right? Today's show, Under the Crossbones, is sponsored by Pirate Radio of the Treasure Coast, WKKC-DB, playing the best music and pirate radio talk. You can listen to Under the Crossbones on both their stations. Just go to pirateradiooftheTreasureCoast.com or pirateradiotc.com. And don't forget to download their apps. They got the Pirate Radio Treasure Coast app. That's the music station. And they also have the Pirate Radio Talk, which is the talk station. And those are both great. So go check those out. I got a free ebook for you. It's Alexander Exquemelin's Pirates of Panama or Buccaneers of America by Alexander Exquemelin, like I said, and originally published in 1678. This is like serious golden age piratey kind of writing. He was a doctor who ended up on pirate ships and wrote about his travels. It's a really great book, and you can get it for free. I've got a nice PDF version for you. Go to underthecrossbones.com, click on the free ebook link, and you can get it right there. If you're out and about and all you got your phone with you, just text the word pirate and your email address to 94253. Again, text the word pirate and your email address to 94253, and it'll kick you back a little link there, and you can just download it right to your phone or your Kindle or whatever you're reading on. If you want paper, I don't have any paper for you. It's all digital because it's 2017, and we read ones and zeros now. We read screens. We don't read paper anymore, I say, as I'm holding 2 sheets of paper in my hand. So episode 100 is coming up, and it's coming up soon, and I'm still making some plans for it. It's going to be fun, so make sure you tune in for that. We're at 95. I can't believe it's already coming up on 100. I did not foresee it. Well, I foresaw it, but I didn't. It snuck up on me, is what I'm saying. Oh, one other thing. A couple of weeks ago on the episode with Chris from Ailstorm, I mentioned a new song that I had coming out. That was a cover of the Ramones song, I Want to Be Sedated, done in a way that the Ramones would absolutely hate. And that is with acoustic guitars and 3-part vocal harmonies. Anyway, that song is now out. It's on Spotify, it's on iTunes, it's on all the places where you get your music from. And I'll link up a player in the show notes so that you can check that out too if you want. It's a pretty fun version. My girlfriend called it dirgy. So it's only fun if you like dirgy music. But anyway, you can check that out on the show notes at underthecrossbones.com/095. All right, kids, that is our show for today. If you want to find out more about Seadog Slam and Steve Sanders and all that good stuff, go to facebook.com/Seadog Slam. If you're headed over to iTunes to look for anything, make sure you leave us a little nice 5-star review there. Those are always nice. Those are always helpful. And if your podcasty thing has a reviewy thing, do the reviewy thing on there. Make sure you come by and check out the show notes for this episode at underthecrossbones.com/095. That's it. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks.